All right. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever this ultimately winds up, we are live across a couple of those platforms right now. If you are in live, let us know. Let us know where you're checking in from. Drop a comment, say hello, and start lining up any questions you might have for us as we go through this. I'm going to keep this one relatively straightforward, and I will kind of share my message with you guys and then open it up to questions if you have any. And I'm actually going to talk through this exercise and how we do it in our business. And I think in an attempt to bring more value to you guys, get really tactical and actually do a case study and demo this for you. So today's topic is on the concept of core values, making sure that in your organization you have a defined, a unique set of guiding principles upon which you and your organization draw to make decisions with regard to how you're going to operate, how you'll hire, fire, what new business opportunities you'll pursue. Essentially, any decisions made within your organization tie back to these core values. And a lot of times what you'll see is teams, people individually, then teams, then whole organizations operating without a defined grouping of guiding principles. There are no core values upon which to draw to make decisions. Everything is shoot from the hip. And it just hinders growth. There's a lack of clarity there. And in turn, it stifles growth in your organization. But again, this applies to you individually. And as a person, it applies to small teams, big teams. So in our organization, we have a defined grouping of principles of core values that we draw from to make all the decisions that we're called to make each day as we operate our business. And I'll get to those and specifically what ours are in a bit. First, let me just kind of talk through how those of you that don't have core values in your organization or for your family unit or for yourself personally, how you would go and identify them. And so this is going to take a big self-awareness piece, and you'll be called to dig pretty deep. If you're a team of one, then your core values are inherent to you and your personality and how it is that you transact, how you do business, how you go about everyday life. So ours may not necessarily apply to you. I don't suspect that they will. Maybe one or two do, but if all five do, then they're not yours, they're ours. So we want you to define your core values, your guiding principles. That's what this exercise is about. So there's 4 steps in this exercise. And I've got, of course, as usual, I've got my notes ready, and we breathe this stuff in our organization. So this is very much second nature to us because we've been doing it for so long. But for those of you that are hearing it for the first time, I want to take my time and talk through this, right? So your first step is that kind of self-awareness piece. You're going to have to dig deep. You're going to kind of have to look at yourself. And then if you're a team of one, and identify what it is that makes you tick. What are the things that are your non-negotiables? And therein lie your core values within those principles. If you have a team, then what you're called to do as part of this is to look at the people that work around you, the people that you spend the most time with, and identify in them some characteristics that are representative of your organization. So if they've been with you for a while, you're going to see some things in them that are obvious guiding principles in your organization that you guys draw from to make decisions every day that you probably don't even realize you're using, that they don't even realize they're doing, because again, it's nature. It's what makes us up. And so as you go on to hire, like we were saying, hire and fire using these same core principles, these same values, you'll say, hey, my A players, my core group of A players all embody this this value, this speed principle. As you come into an organization, us, for example, we'll interview on that and we'll ask specifically how people feel about speed, because it's something that's so important to us. So first, the self-awareness piece, step one, you're digging in, you're kind of looking at yourself and your core leadership team, if you have one, and identifying characteristics in them that are indicative of how your organization operates. If you don't have a team, you look outside of your organization at other people in the periphery, people in your sphere that operate the way you want to operate. And you say, okay, well, if I was partnered with them in some capacity, I would want to emulate that principle, that inherent characteristic of them and how they do business. So you can go there to find it as well, right? So that's part of step one. And then create a list in step two. Now that you've kind of looked at those people and made the list of the folks that you're going to draw from, now you create an all-encompassing master list of these characteristics that will ultimately become your values. And I've got a list here, and I'm going to rattle off a couple. Again, what's behind me are ours, and they might not necessarily apply to you and your organization and your team, and neither might these. But just to give you guys some ideas, I've got a list, and I'll look down here. So works hard, is never satisfied, is interested in self-improvement, exhibits professionalism, encourages individual initiative, growth-oriented, learning-based, is not cynical, integrity, fun, fair, teamwork. So, and there's a list of 20 or 30, and I'm sure if you Google it, you can find a list as well. But so step one is to kind of identify the people in the organization that you're going to model this after, or outside of it, if you're a team of one. Step two is to draft a all-encompassing list of all the characteristics. And then in step three, you're going to go back to the list of characteristics and circle the ones that jump out at you and cross off the ones that don't speak to you. Because ultimately what we're looking to do is draft a list of about 3 to 7, no more than that. If you're working to more than 7 principles, then those aren't your core values. Those are just a lot of values. And so we all have a lot, but what core values do we work to? So we keep it to 5, as you can see behind us. Again, so now you're kind of circling the ones that speak to you, crossing off the ones that don't. This should be done as a team, if you have a team, or individually, if it's you. And then that's the third step there. And then in the fourth step, it's how am I sure that the ones that I've circled, which is going to be more than 3 to 7, it should be, because that first pass through is kind of it's a brainstorming session. So now you've got, say, 10 or so circled, 10, 12, however many it is. Well, are those really core guiding principles? Are those core values that are embodied in the organization day in and day out? Are those characteristics of the people that you're modeling things that are really happening? Because you got to be honest here. There's a call to, like I said, self-awareness, but also this radical honesty thing where you got to look and say, I think we operate that way. Well, if it's think, then you probably don't. You have to be certain. And if you're certain, then the proof will be in the examples. If you're certain, there will be a track record. You'll be able to draw from examples, case studies, and that's how you validate the ones that you've circled that you believe are core guiding principles, that are core values. So what we've gone on to do in drafting this a couple of years ago was to look at the organization, look at the people in our group, on our team, and each of us have some things that are inherent to our personalities, ways that we like to operate. There's a bunch that are that are displayed across everybody in the organization, those are the ones that we ultimately circled, because we're seeing that all of us apply them, all of us embody them. So how are we sure of that? How are we sure that it's not confirmation bias? It's not us wanting to believe those things, right? Well, then you go back and in step 4, you look for examples to validate them. And so that's what we've gone on to do. And for the purposes of our time together here, we're not going to dig in and talk through a bunch of examples that support each of the values. We don't have that kind of time, but what we will do is talk to you guys about each of the values. And so for us, speed, first and foremost, it came to us almost immediately because it really is inherent in how we do business. And if you're on the other side of this video and doing business with us, which I know a lot of you are, as I'm looking at the names on the list and who is here with us live, you know that we have a policy whereby we turn everything around in 24 hours. We don't let anything linger. If you're on an email chain with anyone in our organization, you'll know that's true. Everything has to be turned around in 24 hours. If it requires further research, the response letting the other person know that it requires further research is expected to go out within those 24 hours. We leave nothing lingering. Speed, I don't know how to make it any clearer than that. No lost days in the field. Everything's turned back around quickly in the office. We just are very much a great example of, and to drive this point home, the example of no lost days in the field and turning everything around. Those are pretty obvious ones administratively, how quickly we turn things back around. But then why then is this so critically important? Why is it? And that list behind us isn't necessarily in priority order, but why is speed so critically important? Well, if you're willing to make a decision with 75% of the data, which is what I encourage everybody to do on our team and anybody listening and watching, you're already that much further ahead of the folks in your space that are waiting to have 100% of the data to make the decision. If at 60, 65, 70, 75% of the data, you're comfortable enough to make a decision, which in our organization, we absolutely are. We've got time to make the decision, course correct, pivot, and make a second decision before a lot of people get the 100% of the data that they need to make the initial decision. And so that's an embodiment of speed for us. Secondly, team, straightforward. I don't need to beat this one up too much, but what I will say about it is, and we use the phrase protect this house. So everyone in the organization is expected to support each other in an effort to get that person, to help that person get their job done. So we don't expect that anyone's going to sit in anyone else's seat for a prolonged period of time. But if for whatever reason, something comes up and someone is burdened by something and just needs some help digging out of a situation, a problem, a challenge, we have to make sure that everybody else on the team is cross-trained to the extent that they can step in and lend a helping hand, not necessarily do the work, but help get the work done, streamline it, push it across the finish line if it's a project with a deadline, something like that. So that's what we mean by team and support. It's really about protect each other, protect this house, support each other. Third, and those of you that have followed us for a while will have heard me say this: quality, right? How you do anything is how you do everything. We are a big believer of the importance of consistency and quality, not just in our work product. It goes from, what's happening in the field in our real estate investment, in our fix and flip division, to something as simple as the consistent naming convention with which we send out all of our emails. You'll notice that even Traction Thursday and what we're doing here, the branding should be consistent across all the platforms. We are a big proponent of the importance of quality. And again, how you do anything is how you do everything. If you're willing to compromise on the little things, what does that say about your willingness to compromise on the bigger things? Fourth, versatility. So, and what you see behind me is the Red Queen hypothesis. And we have the word, and then we have kind of a phrase that encourages people to put their own words to what that core value means to them. So that's why you see the things behind me. So no lost days, protect this house, how you do anything is how you do everything. with regard to versatility, the Red Queen hypothesis suggests that it takes all the running that one must do simply to remain in place. If you care to grow, you must be willing to evolve. And so for us, versatility is about a willingness to evolve and pivot, which couldn't be any more relevant than it is right now, given what's going on in the small business space, in the real estate investment space. COVID has flipped everything on its head. Perfect example, just before all this happened, we were slated to host an in-person workshop. And obviously that's not happening. People aren't meeting in person anymore. So we didn't simply cancel the event and put our head in the sand and wait. We got creative. We were versatile, and we took the curriculum that we would have delivered in person and we repositioned it as a virtual offering and hosted our same workshop virtually. So versatility is about your willingness to pivot, to adjust to the circumstances as they're thrown at you. That's really important for those of you that are watching that are in the real estate investment space and doing fix and flips in particular. If you've ever ran your own projects, if you're in the field, you've been thrown curveballs. I mean, it's an inevitability like that. On any project, you will be thrown a curveball. What do? Do you throw your timeline out the window and just take it, at face value, or do you get creative and look for a solution? And then finally, the fifth value is service, and it's givers gain. That's what we say internally. And we'll talk about our core focus, our mission and our vision, and how you guys go about developing those, within your organization next week. But ours is we serve you in your situation. So if you're a seller and you're looking to sell a home, for example, we want to understand what your situation is, not that, I need to get the most money I can for this home. Well, yeah, everybody does. But what exactly is driving that? Why do you need to get the most dollars for this? Is it because you need to go to Florida to be with your grandchildren because your son-in-law got a new job and was relocated there? If so, then me getting you to Florida, sooner is more important than those $5,000 or $10,000 extra dollars, is it not? So I'm serving you in your situation by understanding your situation, by looking to give. In return, we will gain. So again, we could go on about examples that embody each of these. It's how I was certain when we sat down to do this a couple of years ago that these are in fact our core values, and we have not deviated from them. We operated to them before we had them, and we've operated to them since we've drafted them. So all that really did was affirm for us that these are in fact our core values. And the list had more, but these were the ones that we were able to get those solid examples to support. So I see a bunch of questions coming on, and Jermise, if you're on, maybe you can unmute and push some of the questions through to the chat, because they're not coming through in the comments, but I do see them live on Facebook, and maybe I can answer some of them as we kind of go back and forth with this. But again, I'll just highlight what the steps are in the process, so that way I can make this very tactical, like we do with all of our workshops, all of our educational events. Everything is about doing work and coming away from it better than you went into it. So if you're watching this for the sake of watching it, I hope that brings you value and that you're being entertained as well. But what I really want to do is see you take some of this away and go back into your organization, you and your team of 1 or 3 or 5 or however many people that ultimately is, and do the steps. One, identify the people who are your A players, people in your organization. Then secondly, create a list of the characteristics that they embody. Thirdly, take that brainstormed list and circle the ones that are organizationally that speak to you as possible core values. Cross out the ones that aren't, and then fourth and final, go to the highlighted ones, to those circled characteristics that will ultimately become your core values, and extract supporting stories, case studies that you can use to validate those values. that they are in fact embodied throughout the organization. More than just one person on the list does it that way. If you can do that, then you're working your way towards the tighter list. And again, this exercise is something we did a couple of years ago, but this will take, this is supposed to take 2 days to do this in parallel with the focus, the mission, the vision, your 10-year target, your 3-year picture, your 1-year plan. Just this is all crafting of a vision. These are all different elements of that. Just this component in particular, though, I think warrants a solid half day of work. And so I would also suggest, which is what we did, is you go off-site. You don't do this in the same space that you would ordinarily do your daily stand-ups, your weekly huddles, your L10 meetings, your quarterlies, wherever it is that you do those things. That's not where this takes place. This takes place off-site. Something we do with our quarterlies. We always find a way to go somewhere, and I know now this is going to be a little bit challenging because everybody's working virtually, but then again, that could also be fun, right? You could do this all via Zoom, but you go off-site, Topgolf or something like that, and take it there, and that's where the creativity will flow. That's where the brainstorming will take place, and that's where this will come to you. So again, I wanted to be able to kind of go back and forth with you guys and keep it interactive, but it looks like, as usual, we're not having the questions flow through, which is part of the challenge of these lives and part of the fun of this. But if you find value in these exercises, and I'll go back in and answer the questions later. So if you're watching this after the fact and you do have questions, drop them in the comments because we'll go back through these things. But if you're finding value in these, let us know. Drop that in the comments. Just let us know, like, comment, share this with others that you think might find value in this. Again, this is being done in an effort to give business owners, small business owners, just leaders, anybody that's building a business or wants to build a business, just a hand up in this very trying time. And clarity will be the key. I've been thinking a lot on routine will set you free, right? It seems counterintuitive, but by having a routine, having clarity and focus on a handful of select specific things, important things, you've got the freedom to make the decisions to do those other things. So think about that, come away from this with that as your homework, and encourage you to do this. Give this a shot. If you're struggling in any way, again, drop a comment. If something that you'd rather send privately to us, go ahead and do that. And we look forward to engaging with you. And I hope you're finding value in these. And again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.